Garrett Nussmeier re-aggravated a knee injury this week. We'll talk about how significant it was and if it will have an impact against the Tigers in week 1 right here on Locked on Clemson.
You are Locked on Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of right here on Locked on Clemson, part-time host and producer over on the flagship station 105.5 The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked on Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day, and big salute out there to the everydayers. You are the heartbeat of the show. You're the ones who ride or die with us Monday through Friday every single week. And if you're new to the show, well, welcome in. You can always hit that like and subscribe button and follow us and never miss an episode going forward. And guess what? You can always go back and listen to those episodes you missed as well. We have a ton of stuff to get into with some big news about the LSU quarterback, or maybe not so big news. We'll talk about it. But before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So check out FanDuel over on FanDuel.com or your FanDuel app. Again, Garrett Nussmeier. Wow. I mean, this thing broke loose quick this week. Honestly, I feel like Gamecock fans were probably retweeting it or reposting it, resharing it, whatever you want, re-Xing it out there more than most. But Garrett Nussmeier, it was said that he left practice. He was on the field. He had a non-contact injury. And to be honest with you, before we get into it, the specifics of it, I don't ever wish anybody to be injured. I think that's unprofessional. I think that's, disrespectful from a media standpoint, from a fan standpoint, from a graduate, whatever it may be, from an opposing team standpoint. I never wish for anyone to get injured. Also, I never wish for anyone to be targeted in any way, shape, or form to be injured. I would prefer, and I know a lot of my Clemson friends over in the group chat also have said, hey, we don't want this news. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to share it because we'd rather have LSU at their best, because no SEC team, regardless of LSU or anybody, is going to give you any credit if you beat them without their starting quarterback. Really, most teams in the country aren't going to give you any credit if you beat them without their starting quarterback. So nobody wants to play LSU without Garrett Nussmeier. Now, I understand that's not how life goes. Sometimes injuries play a shape into the season, into your roster, and into a game. But if it were up to me, I would want both teams to be at 100% going at it and see who the true winner is on the field. That is what I think would be the best experience as a fan and as a player as well. We know that Garrett Nussmeier aggravated his patellar tendon. He has patellar tendinitis. Brian Kelly says that everybody has tendinitis. Well, I don't know if I remember having tendinitis that much when I was a college athlete in, 20 years ago. I don't really remember, other than just the ice baths really, really being terrible. But also, I feel like once I turned 35 and got older, everything has tendinitis. So I agree with Brian Kelly in that sense. I understand elite athletes are always injured. It's kind of like, anything out there, the guys have to figure out how they're going to play through injury. It's not if, it's when and how often are you going to have to deal with injury and how significant it could be. So does he have something going on, a structural injury in his knee? No, they said not anything structural, no tears, nothing like that. Just some tendinitis. Obviously, though, tendinitis can be extremely painful. I know those of you out there who can relate to that can agree that it's not something you really want to have to deal with. And it kind of stinks if you're in your early 20s to have to deal with it too. But I understand from an elite athlete perspective that you're not going to be 100%. You're going to have bumps and bruises. You're going to have tendinitis. You're just going to have muscles that don't act the way that they should. Now, Brian Kelly rated it as a 1.5 out of 10. So he said, to me, a 1.5 out of 10 is a non-issue, which is a good thing because we wanted it to be a non-issue. He said that he threw Friday. He's expected to continue to be with the team. Really no loss and no impact for his availability for week 1 against our Clemson Tigers. So no concerns there, at least for him to be able to play. But this is something that is more than nothing. You know, a 1.5 out of 10, for this to be brought up at all, to me, is something more than nothing. Because, as I mentioned, everybody is hurt and injured at this level. Everybody's dealing with stuff. Everybody's in and out of practice. If Cade Klubnik was out of practice one day or had to leave practice early one day, I think we'd still have the same kind of alarm around it, more so than, say, like a defensive back. You know, not to pick on the defensive backs, but if there was a cornerback out, which Clemson seems to always have somebody out in the secondary, it's almost, you're almost numb to it, right? But the quarterback, there's only one player that you want to see, and that is Cade Klubnik, or that is Garrett Nussmeier. And so it's not like, oh, well, let's just throw in another cornerback to replace him kind of situation. So to me, it's something more than nothing that he had to take a step away. 1.5 out of 10, I don't know. You know, we'll take Brian Kelly's word for it. He was on the field. I was not. I don't plan on ever being anywhere near a LSU practice field. So we'll take Brian Kelly's word for it. It's a 1.5 out of 10. But does this mean that, you know, maybe the running game is not 100%? Especially with the running game with Garrett Nussmeier? Maybe they can't expand the playbook as much because he can't run as effectively. That, if that were true, it wouldn't be a 1.5 out of 10. And so then it goes back to, are you questioning whether or not the coach is telling us the truth or not? That kind of is the idea behind it, is maybe there's more to this than not. I don't know. But if it was to a point where it was more than a 1.5, that's when your offensive coordinator would have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, you know, maybe we don't use him like that. And also maybe we don't use his legs as much because it's week 1 too. You know, maybe they can beat Clemson without Garrett Nussmeier running. And I always felt like that was the case. Now, I saw an LSU expert on social media, saw a clip of him talking to on a show recently about how he felt like Garrett Nussmeier needed to run straight at TJ Parker because TJ Parker won't be able to handle it, you know, and it'll really throw Clemson off their game. Go right at him. I thought that was ridiculous. I mean, why would you want to run your best quarterback against our best defensive end? That doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like 9 times out of 10, TJ Parker will win that battle. But I mean, if he doesn't, then that would be shocking to everyone, probably be so demoralizing. Then yeah, it would kind of shut us up and shut us down quickly as a fan base. But I just don't see that happening at all with the skill level that TJ Parker has. So it could be a scenario where maybe 1 or 2 run plays aren't in the book anymore because this is something that actually did happen. It happened versus didn't happen. That's for sure. Will Clemson heat up their pressure on him? I don't think there's any need to. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I don't want to promote going after someone to injure them at all because I don't want that to happen. I think that's disrespectful. I think that's unethical. It's unsportsmanlike, right? I don't want to promote that at all. But with a rivalry game against an SEC team, when you're bringing in the Tigers versus the Tigers, Death Valley versus Death Valley, there is no additional heat that you're going to need to amp up. There's nothing about this that the coaches are going to need to really amp up because this game should be, to me, a precursor to the playoffs, a precursor to a national championship. These two teams are that good. So there is no more needed heat that is needed to add to this game. They should be going after each other, full speed, ears pinned back, without any kind of thought of, oh, you know, this guy is maybe not 100%. 100% or not, quarterback or not, you should be going after them for sure. But again, it's something versus nothing at all. But I'll give Brian Kelly the benefit of the doubt here. Say it's 1.5 out of 10, not a big deal. I mean, Nussmeier, again, over 4,000 yards passing, almost 30 touchdowns. This is a guy, and LSU too. If you go look at the stat book for LSU, they didn't allow a lot of sacks in 2024. First in the SEC, 1.5 sacks per game. Clemson got to the quarterback, probably top 20 nationally as far as getting to the quarterback. So they can get 2.5 sacks per game. So who's going to win that battle? That's what it's really all about, is that interior line, the line of scrimmage battle. Can Clemson get to the backfield better than 1.15 per game? I mean, LSU's offensive line does not allow sacks. But the thing is, you can't really go by 2024 because their offensive line is completely different now. So what number will change the most? Will it be the LSU sacks allowed? I think so. I think the offensive line is a little bit more risky than it was in 2024 versus Clemson's defensive line, which is basically the same guys, added a better player on the opposite side and will help. So definitely something to look out for. Hopefully Garrett Nussmeier is truly fine and we'll get 100% LSU versus 100% Clemson going at it August 30th. Hey, coming up next, we're going to get into the secondary. There's a few guys in the rotation in the mix right now under Mike Reed's group that we want to talk about. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Now, I love FanDuel because the app is super easy to use. You can look at the different payouts. You can figure out how to do a same game parlay and add a few different plays together to get even bigger winnings. And then when you get it all set up, it makes that game a little bit more exciting. And if you win, hey, the payouts are instant. You can keep the fun going and make it last if there's even other games going on that night. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Building the secondary is Mike Reed's main objective, and he's adding in a couple of the younger guys in the fall early on that are in the rotation in the mix that I really like. We've got Branden Strozier and Corian Gipson. They're now entered into the competition to join the rotation for Clemson's secondary. And you got to like that because Clemson's secondary was one that I had a lot of question marks going into 2025. We know to start out, you're going to have Avion Terrell. He's your junior. He's that guy that a lot of people are talking about going to the NFL. While he's not as tall as his brother, he's definitely just as scrappy. He's extremely knowledgeable and extremely physical. So he's honestly been proving himself year in and year out. And another thing is he doesn't really get injured that much, knock on wood. He stays relatively healthy. He plays through injury if he needs to. So number 8, Avion Terrell, for me, your cornerback, number 1. You like him a lot. On the opposite side, you're probably going to have jumping Jaden Lucas, senior Jaden Lucas in Ashton Hampton. Now, I know it really hurts me to say this, but number 10 for Clemson and Lucas, he has not been out there. He's consistently injured, consistently nursing his shoulder injuries. And I hate it for him because it kind of goes back to Nussmeier. And these guys are like 20 something years old and they're already dealing with all these really bad injuries. But Jaden Lucas had a promising start to his career, 5-star guy, local guy, in-state dude. Love this guy. Wanted to see him be successful. But part of being successful is being on the field. And honestly, he's just not on the field. So, and even now I'm going out there and I'm seeing yellow and green penny on him. So I don't really know what to expect from him. He's not getting a lot of opportunities to play healthy in these reps in the fall. And the less opportunities you have, the less trust you're going to have with the coaching staff to be able to be in the rotation. So Jaden Lucas, I don't even know if he's a true backup anymore. Really, that's shocking enough to say. I just don't see him being a true backup anymore. I see him maybe being third string because you just don't know if he's going to actually be out there or not. So you have Ashton Hampton. This is a guy who had a monster freshman year, really came on strong. Number 23. He's probably going to be your starter at this point. That's what we're thinking. He's got the size, he's got the physicality, and definitely has the footwork to keep up with anybody. It's going to stress Clemson out this year with LSU for sure, right out the gate, because we know that's what the fan base is telling us. That's what my research is telling me. When I look at LSU, one thing that we know for sure is that they are going to be fast. They're extremely talented. Now, how well can they turn that into football results? Time will tell. We shall see. But right now, where Clemson, I think, is going to get stressed out the most is with that secondary with LSU. And it's because they got a bunch of speedsters at wide receiver. Now, Ashton Hampton, I trust. Avion Terrell, I trust. After that, it's really a lot of big question marks because, again, Jaden Lucas, you don't really know if he's going to be out there or not. So enter in Branden Strozier and Corian Gipson. Gip, as they say, or as Dabo says, Stroz and Gip. Strozier from Lovejoy, Georgia, 6'1", 180, and then Corian Gipson, 6'1", 190 from Fort Worth, Texas. Heard a lot about them in the spring. But not a lot of games, not a lot of opportunities. Gipson redshirted last season. Strozier played in a few games, had a few tackles, but he's a redshirt sophomore himself. So both redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore for those guys. Clemson did not rank very well last season in opponent passing yards per game in 2024. So pretty low, like 60th. Mid 60s. So they need to be able to improve their back end. Mike Reed needs to find corners that he can trust to be able to adjust quickly to the game, but that are young but need to adjust, but also that can keep up with LSU. That's my biggest worry is, or one of my biggest concerns is LSU's speed against his secondary. So right now we'll have to circle these two guys outside of Terrell and Ashton Hampton. You've got Branden Strozier and Corian Gipson. Can you trust them? I haven't seen enough to even be able to say anything about these guys. Now, I'm glad they're getting reps early on in the fall. I mean, they have a few weeks to go before they're going to be required to be ready. But I expect these two guys to be on the field very often and very early on in the game against LSU, because Clemson needs to be able to mix it up. They need to be able to rotate and give guys Terrell and Hampton breathers. And they need to be ready for these. In my opinion, they need to be smart enough to figure out how to properly bracket and to properly play their zone coverages, because I don't really know if anybody on Clemson's secondary can keep up pound for pound with LSU's speed at wide receiver. I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't think it's even possible, that LSU's speed is just too good for Clemson one-on-one with anybody. Maybe Ashton Hampton, maybe, but of the other guys, I don't know. I really have a big question mark there. I would tend to trust that LSU's faster than those guys. Now, how can they beat that? Well, they've got to be more physical. I believe that a Mike Reed-led defense and a Tom Allen-style aggressive defense and in those cornerback positions will help the young defensive ends be more aggressive and rise to the occasion. But it's going to be a challenge, that's for sure, for these backup guys, especially if they have to rotate in more than we were thinking. To me, LSU would be smart to come out in a heavy wide receiver look and throw bombs out there. I would probably feel as if test Clemson's secondary early. I know some people have said, run Garrett Nussmeier early. I don't really think you even need to do that. I know I originally thought LSU would be a team that would run with their traditional running backs like Barry and Durham and Jackson. But while those guys are definitely very lethal and could eat up Clemson as well, I think your biggest mismatch would be that speed on the outside and the number of wide receivers that you have with that kind of elusiveness and the big question marks we have, not only with the backup cornerbacks, but with the secondary and the safety position as well. We just don't know. We know that they've been on the team. We know that they're just not brand new. They're not transfers. They're not just learning this system from the start. So they should be ready as far as system-wise goes. But keeping up with that kind of speed is going to be a big question mark for me going into week 1. Can they do it? Will they even be tested? Because to me, that was my strategy if I'm Clemson. My strategy is don't even allow Garrett Nussmeier even the time of day to even do that. Use your front 4, your front 7 to get to the backfield quickly so they're not exposing your secondary that is relatively young and inexperienced on the outside. So that's my thoughts there. Again, we've got 4 guys in the mix here: Terrell, Hampton, Strozier, and Gipson for your cornerback position. So make sure you have those on your list as we're going through our roster management for you nerds out there. All right, we're going to finish up the show talking about the offensive line and that quest for 10. And the crazy thing is, I thought 7, then I thought 8. Now we might be close to 9, maybe even getting near to that big number 10 that Dabo was looking for by the end of fall camp. Clemson keeps pushing towards that 10 lineman list that they're looking for. The first group of guys, you got 5, okay, for your newbies out there. You got 5. You got 2 tackles, 2 guards, and a center. The first group looks pretty stable to me. I think you would agree as well. Left tackle, Tristan Lee. Left guard, I'll go ahead and say like Colin Sadler, Harris Sewell. Let's say Harris Sewell, okay? And then Ryan Linthicum at center, Walker Parks at right guard, and then Blake Miller at right tackle. To me, those guys have all been in the system. They all know what they're doing. They should have no need for learning anything. At this point, they should be just getting incrementally better at what they already know how to do and being more precise and specific with their movements. So Clemson's first 5, good. Now, I know we've got a few guys behind them. We've mentioned Elijah Thurman. He's already got some reps last season before hurting his ankle. So he's got to be in the rotation. That gives you 6. We'll put Colin Sadler in there. That gives you 7. We mentioned Braden Jacobs, true freshman guy that you're not going to be able to keep off the field for very long. So that gives you 8. Now, after that, who is the next guy up to give you 9? And for 9, we're hearing Easton Ware. We're hearing Ronan O'Connell and Mason Wade possibly in that mix. So we've got a few other guys that could possibly get Clemson to that rotation. Now, would you really want to see Ronan O'Connell much? Honestly, we're getting kind of towards that fringe. I already mentioned to you I'd rather have 7 trustworthy guys. That's kind of my go-to number if it were me, because I just know it's very difficult to truly have 10. We've heard so many years that they've had 10 offensive linemen and we just never see them. But we're hearing from Dabo, Ronan O'Connell is repping with the second team on the drills, and they're trying to do their best to get those 10 guys to strengthen their depth. The current 5, you definitely trust. The flexibility of the guys after that, I feel pretty strong. I think Sewell being your backup center, he's getting reps there. Sadler and Thurman at left guard. You got Jacobs and Lee at left tackle there. And then you could put in O'Connell behind someone else on the right side. And we've seen it in the past, if you lose Miller for whatever reason, or Miller has to come out, Then you slide Parks over and you put somebody in the guard position. So Clemson actually, of all the years, are extremely flexible at the offensive line position. So how close are we to a true 10-man rotation? I mean, we're looking at 9 right now. It's August the 8th, and we're looking at 9. Maybe there's just one guy that we haven't heard much from. I know I've mentioned his name, Dietrich Pennington. He's still on the team. We just never hear anything about him. And he's like a more veteran guy. But Clemson has plenty of other guys that we've talked about in the past. We're just not hearing a ton about them in the fall so far. So the ones we are hearing of, we can write down, and we got a list of 9 so far, possibly 9.5, because I don't really know Easton Ware or Mason Wade or the other guy, the young guy, I think his name. But I feel as if Clemson has, for the first time, the best rotation of offensive line they've had in years. And the starting lineup of guys are guys that could be all conference, multiple guys that could be all conference guys. Now, will they be first round draft picks in the NFL? No, they're not going to be. They're not going to be that. That's for sure. But these guys that are backups, to me, they fill in through the guard position, right? I don't necessarily think this list of guys after your top 5 or 6 are going to be your tackles. Outside of what we've heard with Braden Jacobs backing up Tristan Lee, that's about it for tackles. I haven't heard any really true backups for Blake Miller other than Walker Parks if needed. So to me, all of these young guys funnel through the guard position, and I actually feel really good about it. Compared to most years, when you look at the roster, to me, I mean, it makes sense, really. Watson Young, I think, was the guy's name I was talking about earlier. But so the first unit is going to be ready. I think they're going to see a lot of drills and a lot of consistency. I wouldn't be shocked if you're going to see them the majority of the time. And then as you rotate in, giving some guys different looks when they need their breathers or whatever. But the consistency for Clemson is there, and it's the best it's been in years. So that's one of the reasons why I feel really good about Clemson in 2025, because everything kind of starts around that. As the offensive line can trust each other and work really well with Garrett Riley and what the system wants them to do, they can be in more sync with Cade Klubnik. For the most part, I don't believe that Cade has really been truly in sync with his offensive line 2 years. He started to kind of turn the page in like late last season, but he still gets flustered from that right side. I'd like to see Blake Miller improve in shutting off that edge, because here's the thing. We saw it with South Carolina. I don't want to say a double negative, but I'm not saying that Blake Miller isn't, I guess I'm still saying it the same way, but I believe that Blake Miller can be an all ACC type offensive lineman. I think some of that is coaches' doings behind the scenes that he gets in these preseason ranks and postseason ranks. I think a lot of it has to do with just consistency and the fact that he's playing for a good team and he's constantly a starting right tackle. But I don't feel that he's always been on the same page with Cade, or that Cade's always been on the same page with him. As you saw with that final interception with Cade in the South Carolina game, there was a weakness on the right side of the offensive line, and that weakness was not covered by the running back, and that weakness was not picked up by Cade rolling into that attack. And we see it more often than not with Cade. One of his biggest frustrations, or one of his biggest Achilles heel, if you will, or things that seem to get him, is that he likes to roll out to his right, and Blake Miller sometimes isn't always aware that that's what's happening, and he doesn't seal it off as much as I would prefer. Now, again, I don't know anything, but what I do see is that there's usually when there's a bad play, it's because Cade rolls out to the right and there's somebody that was left free on that right side. So that's what I have a big concern for, or at least something that I'll be looking for in 2025, has that shoring up of the right side of the offensive line with Cade. I don't think it's that Blake Miller is a bad player or not an all-conference player. I think that they don't really feed off of each other that well. And it's hard to know what the quarterback's doing behind you when you can't see him. And maybe that's what falls on Cade. He has to have eyes better to understand what angle Blake Miller is playing, what angle the play call or the scheme called for as well. So maybe it falls on Cade in that. And I can see that argument too. But hey, I appreciate everyone being a part of the show. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. This is the end of the week, so I really appreciate it. For those everydayers out there, again, thank you so much for sticking with me as we continue to go through and get closer and closer to the season. I know it's going to be an exciting time. I love seeing your comments out there, so keep them coming. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen day. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you next week, and we'll see you at the top of the hill.